All right. I think we can get started as people slowly trickle in. So I wanted to say good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and for being a part of our inaugural TSMA Research Committee event. My name is Ria. I'm a research committee member for this year's TSMA 2025 and 2026 and the moderator for today's webinar episode. So we're so excited to invite each and every one of you to our very first webinar, the first of many, to be hosted alongside our wonderful TSMA research co-chairs, Julie and Tyler. This webinar series will be a year-long journey where every month we're going to be discussing and bringing forward new and engaging topics to help close the gap of research questions and hopefully provide all of you with some insight as to how to get involved with research, especially for CT, and answer questions on how to become a valuable member of a cardiothoracic research team. So we're just going to do some introductions. I'm really excited to introduce to you our TSMA co-chairs for the 2025-2026 year, Julie Buchwald and Tyler Lockland. And so before we get started, let's meet them both.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Buchwald. I'm a third-year medical student at UMass Chan Medical School. I'm part of the MD-PhD program over at UMass. And in terms of my CT surgery interest, I'm very interested in heart and lung transplantation, translational research informed by clinical needs, with an ultimate desire to run a translational research lab in the future as a CT transplant surgeon. So very excited to have you all, and really our committee goal this year is, as a TSMA Research Committee, to help break down barriers to get students interested in CT surgery and research. And as we all know, sometimes it's hard to know where to get started. So we hope these webinars will be informative for you as we pursue this journey. And kind of just my story quickly is that my interest in CT surgery with a focus on transplant has largely been guided by my MD PhD experience. I've had the opportunity to collaborate directly with experts, collaborators, and mentors in both the CT surgery and translational research fields to answer pertinent questions informed not only by the OR, but the research bench. So I'm very excited to host this webinar with all of you and looking forward to getting started.
Hello, everyone. So my name's Tyler. I'm a fourth year from St. Louis University School of Medicine. I'm actually applying this cycle. ERAS just went in. So my CT interest is the like aortic surgery or congenital. I also have a voice in the back of my head that kind of hopes I can build a practice on minimally invasive, but we shall see how that goes. So my story with research, I would say probably relatively similar to a lot of you guys who are attending this webinar today. Coming in, St. Louis University is not a place with a home CT program. And when I was a first and second year, we were still kind of building up our CT program. So research was kind of low threshold for a lot of our cardiac and thoracic surgeons at that time, just because we were still kind of in a growing phase. Knowing I wanted to do cardiac surgery coming in and knowing that research was an important part of it, I had a pretty hard time finding opportunity, and I got a lot of no's. I usually like to tell the story. I sent about 50 emails on my first day at SLU to try and find research, and all 50 were pretty much either unanswered or no. And so I had to come up with creative ways to make opportunities for myself. And eventually I was able to find an attending, Dr. Chibueze Onyempa, who would take me under his wing. And we together created SLUSOM's first cardiac surgery research group. And thankfully we now are pretty active, pretty productive. But it took a lot of searching and a lot of persistence in order to make that happen. So I'm excited to share our story and our goals with you guys today. And hopefully this webinar series can give you guys some input and ideas into how you can also get integrated in cardiac surgery.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julie and Tyler. They're the ones with the real expertise here today, but just because y'all will be hearing my voice a little too much, I thought I would introduce myself. So my name is Ria Agarwal. I'm an M2 at Michigan State University's College of Human Medicine. My CT interests are generally pediatric congenital, but similarly to what Tyler just said, coming from a primary care focused school without a CT surgery program or even a home hospital affiliated to it, it's been kind of difficult to find research opportunities, and I found myself kind of reinventing the wheel when it came to opportunities and just expertise in cardiothoracic surgery. So this is my also passion for breaking down some of those barriers and really increasing access to such a competitive field, but such a beautiful field in itself. So I'm really, really excited to be a part of this, and for you guys to just hear from the amazing expertise from Julie and Tyler. All right. And before we go on, I would love for you all to meet our committee members.
Hey everyone, I'm Charles. I'm currently taking a research here at Vanderbilt.
Hey y'all, I'm John Evan. It's good to meet you. I'm a third year medical student at Lincoln Memorial. Hope you guys are doing well. Excited to get to know you throughout the year. If you need anything, feel free just to reach out.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm a third year at Toro in New York. Looking forward to working with you all this year. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Looking forward to the productive year ahead.
All right.
Happy to jump in on this slide. I know I added it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so thanks for all. I helped create the registration form, and you all fulfilled in terms of providing questions for us. And we hope that here are compiled some of those questions, some of which we'll begin to explore this evening. As we mentioned, these will be held monthly, so take a look. If any of these questions are of interest to you, we'll likely be touching upon them. So thank you all for your participation, and I'll throw it back to Ria to get us going here.
All right. So just wanted to quickly plug, this is, as I mentioned, the first of our monthly webinar series. So please feel free to stay tuned and to really keep coming back. Our episode guide is shown here. We'll be talking about everything from A to Z when it comes to doing research, and not even just specifically for cardiothoracic surgery. So if you're still exploring, this is exactly for you. But the way that this today is going to work, or tonight, we're going to just go through some compiled questions that we have already prepared. Julie, Tyler, and then anyone from our committee, if they want to jump in, will be giving their 2 cents on those questions. And then at the end, we'll open it up for anybody to ask any questions that we may not have touched on at that time. All right. So our first question, what's the best first step for someone with no prior research experience?
I can start us off, Julie. So I am a non-traditional medical student. And if anyone doesn't know like what that means, essentially, I came into medicine after a 2-year gap year, and my degree in undergrad was actually in criminal justice. So I literally had no idea what research even was coming into medical school. And it was a very daunting experience. I just knew that I had to have it. But like I said, I didn't know what it was. So for me, one of the first steps that I took was I needed to find someone who'd kind of be willing to take me under their wing. I will say that residents are very, very busy, but they are probably the most helpful in terms of being research mentors from like the beginning. And attending, when you approach attendings with research and wanting to assist them, they're going to kind of need for you to have a little bit more experience. So having residents, made it a little bit more approachable for me. So I literally emailed a resident and I was like, hey, do you have any research projects? How can I get involved? And he is amazing. He took me in, and Dr. Joseph O'Malley, I'm gonna plug him in there. He took me in and kind of walked me through specifically retrospective chart reviews, and helped me understand what is research, what is a research question, what's a hypothesis, what is statistical testing, all of those things. So if you don't have any research experience upon entering medical school, or even as a second, third year, fourth year now, I would encourage you to reach out to someone like a resident who actively is involved with research, and then also be willing to kind of do some homework on your own. YouTube videos, I watch YouTube videos quite often just on statistics, but those videos can also kind of give you a good introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. And totally agree with everything Tyler has said. And I also think it's important not only to know, when it's time to contact somebody to make that first step, but also knowing what time you have to offer. I think as medical students, we have a hard time of saying no. But I think research is something that once you say yes, it's important to deliver what you're agreeing to. And so you need to be realistic with your time and your energy because at the end of the day, medical school classes should always take priority. That is what we're here to do. Research is just an added benefit of something that, as aspiring CT surgery applicants, that is often required of us. So I would say, have a realistic grasp on what your schedule is like, whether that be, when you're reaching out as an MS1, MS2. And that could be even, a few hours per week if you're being realistic with your schedule, or that could be something that say, during the MS1 or MS2 years, you take a look at your summer and notice that you have some availability for research for dedicated summer research opportunities. Then that can start kind of guiding what type of research you want to pursue, whether that's with a faculty member, if you're lucky enough to have a home program, or to start ahead of schedule and start looking at opportunities that could be funded, may not be funded, but at external institutions or during the summer. So I'd say first, yeah, know what time you have to offer. Get to know the people in your department, even if it's not directly related to what you want. Maybe it's more of a cardiology department or something like that. I would say start small in the sense that, get to know the people around you first. And I think you'll always be surprised at who knows who in this field and may be able to help point you in a direction once they know of your interests. And I think something that you can just do, get started on, like boots on the ground type of material, is just start reading academic papers. You have to get familiar with the language to use the language. And I would say, if you're interested in, congenital surgery or structural heart surgery, just go ahead and start. Maybe make a goal of like once a week, start reading a paper in your field and jot down maybe like 2 to 3 tangible conclusions from that paper. That way you're thinking with a purpose, with intentionality, and that can help guide you in terms of if you're finding something that you're reading that you are enjoying, that can help you also guide how you reach out to potential mentors. So I would say all of those things, and just attend as many seminars. I think we live in a world that is very social media driven, for better or for worse, but chances are, weekly or monthly, there could be seminars that you may be able to attend to kind of dip your toes into that water as medical students, that we have the ability to just hop on a Zoom call and learn from experts. So I would say, yeah, as a new student entering the field, those are some of the tangible things that I think helped me and kind of reduce that barrier, things that you could get started on right away, even if you don't have a direct mentor.
That was all amazing. Thank you so much, Julie and Tyler. If none of the rest of our committee has anything to add, I just did want to quickly say, as somebody who is an M2, barely getting involved in everything, also see if your institution has any resources. We have an amazing statistician here involved with the medical school. Even though we don't have any CT program, she was the one who taught me how to conduct a full systematic literature review. So use the resources available to you. There's a lot out there. And published papers are my best friend when learning how to actually write. So exactly what Julie said, if you're writing something, look at what's already done. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's going to help you actually get your boots on the ground. All right, moving on to the next question. How do you approach a busy attending or mentor about joining a project?
Happy to start on this one, Tyler. I think it can be sometimes so intimidating as medical students starting out. We know that attendings are very busy. And so to get face-to-face time or even get put on their schedule is such a privilege. And so we need to take advantage of that when the opportunity presents itself. I would say, be intentional, kind of related to the first question. Whatever time you have, approach that meeting if you can kind of get your foot in the door within a busy attending, be intentional, like aim to impress them right off the bat. Come in with a PowerPoint, like, and it's okay to maybe propose too much or something that might be way out of your league, but show that you've put some time and thought into this meeting. I think will kind of catch their attention and show that right off the bat you're a student who is intentional, who sets goals, and who comes in with a purpose. I think will be hugely beneficial. I would always say, if possible, try to meet them in person. I think it's always, being virtual nowadays, people can get easily distracted. So if you're somewhere, if you're able to kind of bump shoulders with somebody at a conference or something like that, kind of put yourself in an uncomfortable spot and just ask if you could like grab a coffee with them, during one of the breaks, and just kind of put yourself out there and just be flexible. I've been canceled on many times when trying to, I was in their Outlook calendar, but an emergent case got put on their calendar, and of course my research meeting is not as important. So just be persistent, continue to reach out to them, and be open in making it happen, whatever that may look like.
I literally echo everything that Julie just said. I would say, in addition to that, so I am of the mindset that closed mouths don't get fed. So, and I think having a busy attending almost works in your favor, because they're busy because of all the other things that are going on. So, what better for them than to have you, who has the time to work on the bits and pieces of the research project that they don't have the time to do. I usually kind of how my approach has been since I've gained more experience with research and writing and IRBs, et cetera, is I will literally approach an attending, let's say nervous or not, I approach them and I'm like, hey, I saw or heard that you were doing a project on blank. And I have experience with, getting manuscripts started. So working on the introduction, interpreting results, et cetera. And I literally pitch myself as like somewhat of like these are the qualities that I have, and here's how I can make your life easier. I think when you approach it that way, it kind of not only does it for the attending, they're like, okay, like this is someone that I can take on. It's not going to be an additional thing on my plate, but more so someone who can help take things off of my plate. And I would also just kind of be willing to, unfortunately, like, yes, they are very busy, and obviously being respectful of their time, but also recognizing that, like, especially if an attending is doing a project that you're interested in, be willing to just put yourself out there. I was a very shy person coming into medical school, and I realized, busy or not, if I have to catch you in the cafeteria, I was desperate, friends. If I had to catch you in the cafeteria and just say like, hey, I'm Tyler. I sent you an email a couple weeks ago. Just wanted to see how I can help with the research project that you have going. Obviously read the room a little bit, but they tended to be, like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you. And I would get a response back within that week. Also, a lot of busy cardiac surgeons actually have schedulers who maintain their schedule. So I would say if you can visit their office and locate their scheduler, who's more often than not like located right outside of that attending's office, feel free to go up to them and say, hey, I'm a student. I wanted to try to have a meeting with Dr. Bushwald to talk about her research project. I think that also could be a good way to kind of navigate their busy schedule. But like Julie said, you have to be flexible. Sometimes things come up that you can't control.
Thank you both so much. All right, so moving on to our next question. What should you look for in a project to know that it's worth your time?
So I will say very quickly, I think knowing the different types of projects can kind of help you gauge where that project might be going. So if you have an attending and you approach them and they know they have research and they're like, yeah, like I have this project, it's longitudinal. We basically want to assess post-op complications at the 7-month mark for whatever. Just know that it's going to be a long project that's going to take quite a while to get results. The sad reality of the medical student experience with research is, unfortunately, numbers, quantity is a thing that we have to go for. And with quantity comes some of those quicker projects that we can push out. Case reports, case series, retrospective chart reviews, those tend to be shorter projects slash projects that you can do within your own time. Prospective studies, it takes a lot, though they are more robust on your resume or CV. Those can take a little bit more time. So I would just say my quick answer to this is projects that are going to get you some of those quicker results will be like the case reports, case series, and retrospective chart reviews. And the projects that are going to be more robust on your CV and kind of give your CV a little bit more oomph are going to be the prospective studies.
Yeah, fully agree. The other thing I think as well is find meaningful tasks that not only will get you a deliverable, so as Tyler was mentioning, some sort of a publication or an abstract that you can write that will allow you to present at a conference. And it could be big or small. It could be, just within your own medical school conference. It could be like a research symposium day, or it could be a national or international conference. So enter knowing that you're here. To have a deliverable and walk away with something that you can have on paper, whether that be a publication or an abstract that will be yours. Ideally, first author. Sometimes that's hard to control, and authorship conversations can be at times tricky. But I think that's important to advocate for yourself and make that desire known early on. Like I am looking, following along to question number two, like I'm a medical student. I am open to these opportunities. And at the end of the day, kind of my expectation is that I will do this to accomplish this and make it very known. And that also shows that you're goal oriented and that you're here not just to, play around in an Excel spreadsheet, but you're here to hopefully publish something or, present an abstract somewhere at a conference. And so I would say, yeah, have that meaningful task. And also find supportive mentors. And that could mean a lot of different things when it comes to attendings, but you're also here to have some sort of learning opportunity to build character, to accomplish all of these things to help you get to your next goal, whether that be, find out what you like and don't like about research, find out that about what you like about a topic or not, and then ultimately use it to help you apply into residency. So I would say something that has helped me is find mentors who have a track record. It's sometimes appealing to find younger attendings, and oftentimes they will have the time, the energy, and the enthusiasm to help you. However, this can also go a different way in that maybe they're new to this experience, and so they wholeheartedly agree to the request to mentor you, but they just lack the experience and know, potentially how to handle like a busy workload, mentoring students and such. So my advice, if you're able, maybe find two people at different career stages to kind of help you throughout this process. And if one is a bit slower, then you have the other one to fall back on. And again, be intentional about those timelines, and making sure that you're hitting those goals that you discuss with them. And finally, I think what has helped me is always try as best as possible to align your interests to your future career goals. It's hard as medical students to know exactly what you're interested in. I think I was fortunate that I did have those few extra years for the PhD to kind of find out what I like, orient my research to have that kind of topic focus. And then that allowed me, when preparing abstracts or writing publications, to work with the people in the field that I hope to be colleagues with one day. And so it kind of helps sets you up for success. It helps you to learn the language of the field. And so I would say all of those things, that to know a project is worth your time, if you're getting these things out of it, that ultimately help you. And as cheesy and, we must acknowledge, putting a line on your CV, like that is important at the end of the day. Our time is precious as medical students. So just be intentional about how you're spending your time, so that you can get something out of it that's a tangible product.
And
That was
quickly, sorry, I think,
perfect.
sorry, one last thing I would add for this and for previous ones too, whichever school you're at, I would try to see if there are other students who are interested in CT. Perhaps there are students before you that have done this. They'll definitely have a better idea of who in the school is a good mentor, what kind of projects are going on, and hopefully can get you plugged in. So I think talking to your own peers is a really valuable resource as well.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. One thing that I found really helpful was even just asking the school if there were any matriculants into CT surgery, right? What past students that came from your program matched into CT? That's a direct in that you have into current residents and then potential attendings as well. And people like school spirit and they enjoy supporting those from their alma mater. So that's a great way to get directly in and also just really know what time you have. This is something that Julie really touched on the first question. Be really honest with yourself about the time that you have to devote to something. So you don't want to overextend yourself and you don't want to overpromise. Because that's only going to hurt in the long run. All right, moving on. How do you balance clinical rotations and classes with research deadlines?
I'm happy to.
Go for it. Mhm.
Are you sure? Okay. Real quick, before I answer, please, if any of this is resonating with our attendees, feel free to drop comments, questions that you have or experiences, and we'll hit upon those later as we go. But just wanted to put a plug in for the chat. So yeah, question 4, how do you balance with deadlines? I think this is always a difficult thing, not only with research, but anything as a medical student. I think we're always interested in everything. And again, we have a hard time saying no. So everything is appealing to us to some degree. And at some point, you'll get busy enough that you have to make the hard decision of limiting your time, creating boundaries, and getting better at saying no. I think some of the things that have helped me as somebody who has taken over 4 years to complete a PhD is really I've gotten better with time management. I still have a hard time saying no, but I've gotten better. And I think some of the ways that I've found that help me balance things to maybe be able to say yes more is to communicate expectations clearly as well as deadlines. And be in constant communication with the team. So, if I walk out of a meeting and there are 5 things to do, first of all, follow up with the team saying, okay, from this meeting, these are the 5 action items that need to be completed prior to next meeting. So that kind of sets the expectation of what is expected. But that also kind of gets on your radar of the things that need to be done prior to the next meeting in written form, which makes it more real, and thus kind of holds you accountable more. And also, like, there are times, of course, when you need to ask for help in research or in anything as a medical student. One cannot always do everything on their own. And so maybe if you have the privilege of leading a project or working with other students, allocate the task accordingly. Because I think that goes hand in hand with balance. We're not expected all the time to do everything. If you're working with a team, it's actually frowned upon to do everything, right? You have to know how to manage something well. And so that comes in allocating who's good at what, or if you're wanting to acquire or learn a new skill, maybe that's something that you communicate to the team. Say, hey, I'm really wanting to learn this. I will take this on and I'll be in touch if I have any questions. Um, as Ria said, don't overpromise and underdeliver. You want to do things well in a shorter time and then be consistent with this, But of course, things come up as medical students, exams, we're used to that feeling of a deadline quickly approaching. If there's something you can't do, just communicate with the team. And something that I've found helpful, sometimes it's intimidating once you just finish a big research meeting to think about another meeting, but maybe don't leave that meeting until you schedule, get another one on your calendar. Because again, this kind of holds you accountable for what information that you need to have completed prior to the next research meeting. So that could be, every week you're holding these meetings, every 2 weeks, but really get it on your calendar so that, you have something prepared so that when that date approaches, you're thinking about it, not just the night before at midnight, scrambling to put something together. So I think those, would be some of my thoughts.
I would echo all of that. I think one of the strongest parts about research as a medical student is usually you're doing it with a team of people. Something that I struggled with in the beginning was being open and honest about my schedule, or if I was overwhelmed with a project, or if a deadline was coming up and I wasn't sure if I'd have to sacrifice school or whatever to meet that deadline. And I had to be honest with myself and honestly with something that I tell the students in our research group now at SLU is school comes first. So before you take on any task, recognizing, the cardio block is coming up, and that's the hardest block at our institution, I would agree. And so, or I would say so, recognizing the cardio block's coming up, guys, I don't know if I'm going to hit this deadline to get, the results section complete. I think being willing to communicate and be vulnerable with your research team actually helps with the success of that team in the long run. I would argue on the opposite side of that coin, as a research team member, recognizing if you are a fourth year and you've finished all your sub-Is and you have more time on your hands and you're in a team with first and second years who have step 1, step 2 coming up, then, checking in with them and saying like, hey, are you guys doing okay? How's everything going? But yeah, like definitely be open about what is going on in your schedule and if you'll be able to meet those deadlines. And then the second thing I would say is before you take on a research project, it's okay to ask what the goal of that project is. So if the goal of the project is to present at STS in 7 months or AATS in 7 months, whatever, then that's 7 months that you have to kind of get that project and kind of see, are we starting this project from the very beginning where we still have to submit the IRB, or is this actively happening right now and I'm kind of coming in at the middle or the tail end of the project? When you know what the deadline is or the end goal is, you can kind of structure your schedule around that. And that's something that I had to do. So when I would approach residents and say, hey, or attendings and say, hey, you have a project? And they're like, yeah, we have this case report or whatever that we want to get done. Okay, what's the deadline? Well, we wanted to try to submit. So I did a couple neurosurgery papers. We want to try and submit this to WNS or whatever in a month. Case reports, they can be relatively quick. And I wasn't in a busy rotation at that time. So I was able to get it back to them in a week. Schedule is now cleared up to get it done. So it was done and out of the way. But I've also been in projects where the deadline is literally the next day and the resident reaches out to me and they're like, hey, I need you to help me try and get this done. Do you have the time? I have to be honest with myself sometimes and say like, I have 6 other projects that are going on. Like maybe I shouldn't. So then my response is like, hey, I'm kind of busy right now, but I do have a student that I think could get this done. And we'll talk about this a little bit later with saying no to projects. But I think just kind of being open and honest about the deadline and where you're currently at. But balance is difficult. I think that in life in general, balance is difficult to achieve. So kind of, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, know what the deadline is, know what's on your plate currently, and then kind of accept projects and work on projects based on that information.
That was super helpful. Thank you both so much. One thing I'll just say, having an organizational system, it doesn't matter where you're at in life, what you're doing, what you're pursuing, is so important. Especially once projects start ramping up and start gathering, it's really easy to get things confused. Missing deadlines is the worst thing that you don't want to do that. So have an organizational system where you're maintaining every project you're a part of, the progress on that project, any deadlines you need to make, any responsibilities that you have. That way it's something that it's like a solidified database and you can update it and it's living and breathing, but at least it'll be somewhere that in front of your eyes, you can look at it without missing anything. So it'll just be my little 2 cents there. All right, moving on to question number 5. What are common mistakes students make when joining research teams?
I see this a lot, but I will see students join more than one project at a time. And I think that's ambitious, but I think what ends up happening is they join 3 projects at once because we have a big group. They join 3 projects at once, and then let's say one of those projects is like it requires more effort on the student than the other 2 projects. So they'll kind of fall off on the other 2 projects because they're focused in on that one. And I think something that is really important when it comes to research and joining research teams with residents and attendings is your productivity, and your ability to follow through. It will follow you. So because, for example, let's say an attending approaches you and you take on that project and you do really good work, they're more likely to approach you about a project in the future. So that being said, if you take on 3 projects and you don't actually have the time to fully devote to those 3 projects, then that's going to be noticed by the research team leader and possibly even the resident or attending who's also on the project. So that I would say that's one of the first things. The second thing that I would say I see often is kind of like we had talked about earlier, not knowing what project is worth your time. So I'll see students join a project, if an attending drops in our research group chat, hey, I want to study this, students will jump on it without actually thinking, how long is this project going to take? And it ends up being a prospective study where the attending wants to assess patients at the 1 year post-op mark. So that's now a project that kind of has fallen, like you do everything you need to do, and now there's really nothing that's coming of it. So kind of know what that project is, what that project entails time wise, before you take it on, just to make sure that it's worth it. Because then by that point, your fourth year ERAS is in, and you don't have a line for your CV because it's not ready for publication or presentation.
Yeah, 100% agree with all the things that Tyler said. And I think to summarize, in past questions, also the theme that has come up, and again, related to what Tyler has said, the idea of over-promising, under-delivering, never good. Saving things until last minute. I think it's better to, as painful, the last thing you might want to do is work on this research at, whatever time of day. But say, your class gets out early, just spend 1 hour thinking about it, even jotting down notes. And I think that 1 hour will pay off more than expected or anticipated. I think, it could just be starting to think about how you will go about answering that question, what resources, who will you contact? Is there somebody on campus that you could meet to discuss kind of this approach in terms of how you plan on tackling this? So I think, yeah, just be intentional about your time, how you're scheduling, and don't underestimate just a small block of time to contribute towards research, because smaller chunks might actually be better and allow you to be more productive. I find that like when I take a step back from thinking about something, whether that be research or anything, and just coming at it with a fresh perspective, I often will catch things that I've missed or think about this question in an entirely new way. So I would say those things. Thirdly, a lack of communication when things get busy. Um, Sometimes I think we've all been there, like ghosting people when things get busy is never good. And it's hard. You don't want to be the person that says, hey, I can't do this right now. Or, I might have time, but it's unclear. Like it's better to let people know and say, this is my schedule. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to have time, but just giving people a heads up, I think is always appreciated. I would say over communicate your schedule, especially to residents or kind of your immediate superior, so that they can anticipate as well. And it's uncomfortable. It's tough to have to kind of say that and acknowledge it. But I think like Ria and Tyler were saying, it's better to be honest with yourself, because you'll also be recognized as a person who can clearly communicate. And you need that when things get difficult or uncertain, especially in research. And then kind of the last thing I would say is not being willing to step out of your comfort zone. I think, research kind of puts you sometimes in uncomfortable spots, right? It challenges knowledge. I think if you're asking difficult questions, there will oftentimes be difficult approaches in getting that answer. You may be expected to, find a path forward to something that it seems like a complete barrier. So that's when you get talking with people, either classmates or residents, like, hey, have you ever encountered this problem? Or, what resource do you use to help you with this question? I think if you're not oftentimes uncomfortable, then I would say you're doing something that you're maybe too familiar with. And I think, as we all know throughout, as we'll find out with residency applications, we will be asked about our research experiences, and you want to communicate a project that really made you think, kind of stretched your limits and had tangible end goals. And so I think all of those things contribute towards a good research project, but also should be welcomed experiences. And I know sometimes with limited time, you just want something that's easy, that's straightforward. But that at the end of the day, you want also impactful research. And I think that will come through difficulty and sometimes struggling. But that's when you get to lean on others for help and learn those new skills. Yeah, so I would say just being okay with at times being uncomfortable and struggling, but give yourself time to struggle.
That was beautifully put. Thank you so much, Julie and Tyler. Okay, moving on to our next question, and Tyler touched on this a little bit, but when is it okay to say no to a project?
I can start off, Julie, here. Okay, so if we're going to be very honest with ourselves as medical students in this chat right now, we often feel like I felt this way myself, like we can't say no because we know that when ERAS goes out, a lot of programs are looking at number. My perspective on this might be a little bit harsher, I guess, than others. I would say use your no very, very, very lightly. Try and find a way to twist it or turn it. If someone is approaching you with research, so a resident texts you and they say, "Hey, I want to put you on this research project, blah blah blah." I think it's okay to say, hey, yeah, like I actually have step one coming up in a couple of months. So I'm a little bit stretched thin right now, but maybe I can help with a literature review. And then after step one, we can come back to it and see what else needs to be done. I think if a resident or anyone is approaching you saying, hey, do you want to join this research project? Please know that that is sometimes a very rare commodity, and that's a really good sign that they like you and that they want to have you on their project, that they trust your work that you've done with them thus far. So I would say when it comes to saying no, have firm boundaries with yourself to make sure you're taking care of yourself and you're getting a good medical education. That's first always. But also be willing to find a way to kind of turn it to where, hey, yeah, I can take on this project, but I cannot put in the first author work that would be required. I think that would probably be the best way to go about it. Cause like I said, like as medical and realistically, how many of us are saying no to research, right? Like, I think if anyone approaches us with it, like we're like, yeah, 100%. Like I'll do everything. So, so just be mindful of that. But yeah, I would say instead of saying no, try to turn it into something else, that's a little bit more, I guess, productive. That doesn't get you off the project completely. Still lets you do the project, but maybe in a minimal role.
Yes, it sounds like you read my notes, Tyler, because that was very similar to what I had in mind. And I think, you know, yeah, like Tyler said, there's a way to say no, but still communicate your interest. And like, yeah, thank you so much for approaching me. Unfortunately, I have these deadlines coming up that, deserve my priority right now. However, I will intend on checking back in with you, in a month from now, once these are done, to see how I can pick back up the work and continue the momentum. Right. So, clearly you've communicated you're unable to right now, but you still keep that door open. And I think that's always something, like always rephrasing your no. On the flip side, if it's an opportunity that you have no interest in, don't pretend, right? Like that is when that is appropriate, because you don't want to keep, kind of hinting that you might be, you know, uh, might be open to it, and then that resident or, attending keeps trying to contact you. At some point they're going to stop, and then that will be the last time you're contacted. So I think, yeah, be honest about what your interests are, but if you are truly interested, say no in a professional but keeping the door open type of way. Um, and yeah, continue to follow their work too, right? Say like once you check back in with them in a month, maybe they've published another paper, maybe, they presented somewhere, say, hey, like I saw, this on your social media page, or, I saw that you gave this presentation. I really found it interesting for these reasons. Maybe this is something that we could explore in the future, or, right there again, were unable to participate in that. However, you're still maintaining interest and a connection with them. So I would say explore those ways and practice those ways of communicating, if your interest still is truly there, so that that door remains open.
That's so helpful. As somebody who can never say no, I think hearing that advice is always really, really great. It's always about saying no, but not closing any doors for yourself. So I appreciate that. All right. So on to our last scheduled question for this evening. How can students from underrepresented backgrounds or smaller programs access opportunities?
So I'll start off with this one again. I kid you not, like the mantra that I live by is closed mouths don't get fed. And for myself, like I said, like I had a really small cardiac program at home, and like we aren't a research known institution. And so it was difficult for me to find opportunity. And what I mean by that is a lot of research opportunities were not falling into my lap. So that being said, you have to be willing to be creative in how you approach it. So my story is I sent 50 emails on the first day of orientation, did not get any responses back. I was very frustrated. So then I was like, well, I don't like the word no, so I'm gonna go to their office. So I literally went to our academic pavilion where a lot of the attendings offices are, and I started knocking on doors, literally. And I knew the names of the people that tended to be more research productive, so I would knock on their door, they wouldn't answer, and I was like, okay. Then I took to social media. I made a post, and a very well connected thoracic surgeon somehow saw this post. I didn't follow this man at all, but somehow saw this post. And then he helped connect me with my current research mentor, Dr. Chikwueze Onyempa. When I met with Dr. Onyempa, he was a junior attending. He didn't have really any research ideas present. And so when we sat down, I was like, what research do you have? He's like, I don't have any. And so then I was like, okay. So I went home, and at this point I was frustrated because I was just like, I need research and I can't find it. And so then I just read through New England Journal of Medicine, PubMed, cardiac surgery topics, and I read through a lot of papers, and I basically just came up with ideas myself. So I established a research question, and then I went to him with 6 research topics that I wanted to study, and he's like, "Okay, let's do all of them." And I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" I didn't realize you were gonna take to all of them, but anyways, he did, and he was like, let's do all of them. So I gathered together a bunch of students from SLU who were also in my similar position, got them on the projects, and then we got things going. It was daunting, but I think if you have a hard time accessing opportunity with someone already having a project in mind, I think it's okay to approach an attending and say, like I did, and say, hey, I want to study social determinants of health outcomes after redo valve surgery. And then they can kind of help guide you, and then that way, like, they now don't have to come up with a research idea on their own, right? Because it's already there, you've already presented it, and they can help give you the feedback on how to make it a more robust project. So, and then the only other thing I would say is don't be afraid to utilize social media. I think putting your name out there, I still have that post on my Twitter to this day, putting your name out there and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm from this institution, and I'm looking to get involved with research. The worst that can happen is no one reposts it, but the best that could happen is that someone well-connected does repost it for you. And now you have people literally in your DMs. It's what happened to me. You have people in your DMs that are like, hey, would love to take you on. I'm actually looking for a research mentee myself. So I would say that was kind of my approach. Just like, you have to be, if you can't find it and you're having a hard time, be willing to put your hand out for a handshake and make those opportunities happen for yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, the running theme throughout these questions is it's difficult. It is not easy in terms of seeking out these opportunities. And I think, we need to acknowledge that. And I think that's the excitement around our committee this year, and something that we're aimed at helping you all and all medical students interested in CT surgery, because historically it's been difficult. It's sometimes like based on networking or who knows who, and that's not always helpful for people, as we've acknowledged, that don't have home programs, don't have years to spend doing research. And just, don't have those connections. And so it is a priority of ours this year to make these kind of hidden things accessible to everyone. And that's the point of, having these webinars, recording them, posting them. And so that's a big initiative of ours. And just want to put a plug in, be on the lookout for some exciting things, I think, that our committee is working on to make research more accessible, especially in CT surgery. And kind of along the lines of what Tyler was saying is, you know, you have like 2 to 3 things that you are interested in to fall back on if somebody asks you, oh, what are your research interests? Of course, you'll probably be open to a lot of things, But it doesn't always look good to like, oh, I'm open to anything. Like it's like, no, like come in with 2 to 3 things of like, hey, I know this might not be your focus, but these are things that I've read about. I actually just read a paper on this, and these are things that I learned or that I learned were some unanswered questions in the field that I think would be really interesting. And perhaps they could be answered this way. You don't have to be right about it, but I would just say come up with something that seems like something at a medical student level that you could make a pitch for. And then again, that shows interest. I would also say have a short blurb that you feel comfortable talking and telling people about when it comes to yourself, right? Residency applications and just in general, people love little stories and like, how you connect things in your life. And so, and of course, be truthful, but, if there are opportunities or experiences that you've had that kind of drew you to a certain field in research or something that you want to explore, let people know, right? And sometimes that's easier to connect with a person and kind of get started on the right foot if you come forward as a person first with some interest in the field. And finally, be open, be persistent, and ultimately be kind. I think it's a very small field. It's always shocking to know like everybody knows each other, even medical students, right? Like the more we attend these webinars, we get to know each other. Like we all will be future colleagues one day. And so we'll be working with each other. And it's just always important to keep that in mind and know that, yeah, you always want to do the right thing and be kind. And typically those, anything good will come out of those things. And it will just make people's lives easier and your own life easier. So that would be my answer.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. So at this time, we have a couple of minutes to answer just any audience Q&A. So any questions that we didn't get to touch on today, please feel free to put it in the chat or to unmute yourselves and ask them.
If I can add a quick plug while we wait, I think it's important for us to also remember you don't have to like research. I went into research thinking that I had to absolutely love it. And I mean, do I love research now? Yes. But you don't always have to.
That is true. All right, so we have one question in the chat. Anything that you would add or change for DO students?
Yeah, I can chime in on
Yeah,
this one. Or
you go.
Alex, you go ahead. I'll jump in after you.
No, John, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, so I think in my experience with Tyler has been very similar as well, where we did not have a home program to talk about research and to do CT surgery research at LMU. But what I will say is I completely agree with what you said about how closed mouths don't get fed. That's 100% true. And as a DO student, a lot of times, depending on your program, you have to be that handshake. You have to reach out for these things because they're not going to come to you. At our school, we have one CT surgeon who's been retired for several years, does no research. So we had nothing like that. But pretty much the same thing. People are willing to work with you if you're a hard worker and you're a clear communicator and you're professional. So I would just encourage you in that, regardless of what you think people may think about being a DO, that's not really the case anymore. People just want to work with hardworking, motivated students. And so if you put forward that, no one's going to care about the letters after your name.
Yeah, just to add on to that. So I go to a school that has no CT surgeons. We don't have a CT surgery program. We've never matriculated an I6 resident. So what I did from day one is I just immersed myself in the field. So I know I want to be a structural heart surgeon. So I try to read as many journal articles as I can. I listen to podcasts, whether it's like surgery podcasts or cardio nerds. I attend webinars through like AATS or some of the other societies. And I just really just immerse myself totally in the field. And when you do that, you start developing research questions. It just comes naturally to you when you're reading these papers. And I have a Google Doc that I just put all my research questions on. And then when I email potential PIs, I have a study plan. I say I'll write the IRB. This is why I want to do the study. This is why I think it's interesting. I give all the details and I say, I basically just need you to be a PI and mentor me through the project. I can do all the work. And for the majority of the research I've done in med school. I'm a third year now. That's how I've been successful, by just selling myself, making it sound like I really know what I'm talking about. So when they're reading this email from someone they don't know, they're like, oh, wow, he's really interesting. I want to work with him. He knows a lot about this field. Usually med students don't know that. And you'd be surprised how many PIs get like these cold emails saying, hi, I want to do a research project. Not so many med students say, hi, this is a project that I designed. This is how I want to do it. I think would be great for X meeting next year. Would you be willing to work with me so we can make this project happen? And I think if you go in as a DO student, or just any med student with that mentality, I think it would be successful for you, because it's what's worked for me.
Alex, 100%. Literally, I had to sell myself. Like I was approaching people, mind you, had never written an IRB in my life, but I was like, hey, I'm willing to write the IRB. Like I will do literally everything. Like I think that's an important part of that when you're approaching attendings, especially.
I genuinely live by fake it till you make it. You have to have the confidence to be able to put yourself out there. And don't be afraid. And this is something that Julie and Tyler both touched on. Don't be afraid to say yes to something that you have no experience in, because given that you're a medical student, you've proven that you have the capability to figure it out. That's why we're here. We're lifelong learners for a reason. So say if you have the wherewithal, if you have the time, if you have the capacity to take on a project, even if you don't even know what any of the words mean in the title, take it on and teach yourself how to do it. Talk to people who have experience, do the research, do the work, and put in the effort, because it's going to pay out in dividends. But yeah, fake it till you make it, honestly. All right, so we can take a couple other questions. Um, let's see, I see another one. Do you all have any advice on a timeline for research across medical school? Asking as an M1 who's not sure when's a good time to start.
I think it's really important to keep in mind that research takes a long time. It is, I mean, barring case reports, but like even the actual submitting for publication aspect of research, it takes a while, like months. Usually, what I tell people is if you are so willing and you have the capabilities and the bandwidth, starting research right away, it'll never do you wrong. So as an M1 interested in cardiac surgery, I think even you being at this webinar and knowing that research is something that you have to do, it already kind of gives you a little bit of a lead when it comes to this race. So to cardiac surgery. So that being said, I would say don't be afraid to get started now. Reaching out to residents for case reports if you're wanting something small, or like Alex and a lot of us have said during this webinar, reaching out to attendings and saying, hey, I could potentially be interested in studying this. Is there any way we could get a project started? But I would say for me, something I wish I had known coming in is that research takes a very long time, especially if you're doing a project for the sake of like a presentation at a conference, because conferences happen once a year. So keep that in mind. But yeah, I would say it doesn't hurt to get started now and just kind of find a way to get dip your toes in it.
All right. Another question from the chat. Given that most people dual apply, have any of you done any research in general surgery? Do you think that it's helpful or necessary? And any thoughts on best first steps to think about when taking, for instance, a red cap case series or to publish for an institutional review paper?
I did general surgery research. I will just quickly say, I think it is super beneficial to have general surgery research, have research regarding anything on your CV if you can find it. It doesn't have to just be within surgery. I have neurosurgery stuff. I have sports medicine stuff on my CV. I did dual apply, and I think having the general surgery research on my CV was was helpful because it gives me something to talk about on interview day. My research, general surgery wise, was regarding trauma. I have trauma case reports, and I think that kind of lets programs know, like, hey, like she also, just in case, because I6 doesn't have that many spots, she does have this under her belt. So yes, be willing to get general surgery or do general surgery research as well. It can often be more available than cardiac. And I think general surgeons, there might be more open opportunities for general surgery research than cardiac sometimes.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tyler. All right. I think we'll end the evening with this question. I am from Nigeria, currently a fourth year medical student. I've heard of how difficult it can be for people coming from my part of the world. What can you say about this?
Yeah, I can tackle it, Tyler, and feel free to chime in. I think, first of all, thank you for being here. I think, international medical students are faced with difficult challenges in accessing resources, just, acknowledging that. And so, our hope as the research committee in years past and in this year especially, our goal is to tackle this more head on in terms of what resources we can provide medical students. And so we do take that very seriously. And I think, we hope that this webinar tonight was a safe space for us medical students to discuss. But our goal also in future webinars is to bring experts in from the field in, whether those be attendings, with a focus on the CT surgery aspect or attendings who do research and CT surgery to try to eliminate some of that barrier that does exist for you all, to kind of give you names to potentially contact or just to give you more familiar faces. And so that is a goal of ours that we hope to do more of this year through these webinars. And so we are looking forward to that. And I think we welcome any feedback that you all have to make this more accessible as well. But that is one of our goals this year to tackle. So thank you.
Yeah, I would say social media is going to be your best friend. Genuinely, I think making a post, literally post your ERAS headshot and say, hey, I'm so and so from Nigeria, and I would like to connect with research mentors. I will also say Dr. Chibueze Onyempa, my attending who I work with, is super big on mentoring, and he loves when I bring him new students. So please, 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 I posted my email and my Twitter in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. Dr. Onyempa is also Nigerian, so I think that'd be a really nice connection. But reach out to me via email or on Twitter, and I will get you guys connected. But I think social media is going to be one of your biggest tools, because you're right, it is difficult for IMG students. So yeah, social media I think is kind of the best route there.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for all the questions. I also wanted to say, as someone who has family who, like in India, also IMGs looking to come here, I recognize how incredibly challenging and difficult it is. It seems like all of the cards are stacked up against IMGs. But so that's exactly as Julie and Tyler have said, that's our entire goal, right? The webinar series was inspired out of the aim to break down these barriers and to make research and make the field of cardiothoracic surgery more accessible to anybody and everybody who needs it. Doesn't matter if you're from a small town in Michigan or from Nigeria. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. It was lovely to talk with all of you today. So lovely to hear from our amazing research committee co-chairs, Julie and Tyler. Please be on the lookout for our second webinar of this series titled Finding a Mentor When You Don't Have a CT Department / Finding a Mentor just in general. So a lot of the things that we kind of touched on today, but we'll be joined by an integrated CT resident to help answer a lot of your questions. Also too, we have a lot of exciting things coming up, especially in October. We have a student PI podcast coming up, an attending podcast, a TSMA Research podcast. Look out for some spotlight flyers as well, where we're going to be really highlighting our amazing TSMA members. So if you have research that you're doing, a project that you're publishing or presenting anywhere, or anything you're excited about, please fill out the form and we'll be spotlighting anybody who does. We also have a TSMA quarterly journal club, hopefully that we're looking into, and maybe a database release with Dr. Karam Lau. So thank you all, everyone, so much for joining. Have a wonderful evening.